Continuing on from the last video on the same subject, which I would highly recommend that you watch prior, one possible avenue may be the granting of the vote on a per-issue basis in accordance with whether or not the voter is a stakeholder in the decision or not. An example may be the expansion of a manufacturing facility in a town or village. All the existing employees and shareholders, any employees already recruited to work within the new section, and any residents or landholders in a radius determined by the amount of pollution created. If any further stakeholders can be justified, of course, they too can be included. In this way, any interested but not immediately affected party will not be able to distort the decision, such as far-flung environmentalists or supporters of economic growth at any cost. One major problem with this is that many decisions are so interconnected that most citizens could be justified as having a stake in the decision if the standards are too loose, or are loosened over time. To take the same example, say the manufacturing facility in question is a steel mill, typically considered a strategic industry, both vital to the defence of the nation and one required as the basis of many other industries due to the variety of uses for steel. Therefore, if major suppliers and customers to the facility are included as significant enough stakeholders, then the concerns of citizens living in the locality who may be detrimentally affected by the changes will be regularly overruled. Additionally, if the aim is to minimise the decisions made in opposition to the wishes of citizens, this system will not be entirely successful, as we would be still relying on majority rule. Another option might be to, instead of using the vote as a method of arriving at a decision, instead use the vote as a gauge of how people may be redistributed according to the beliefs of the people. In such a way, only the people in proximity to the decision being made would be those who agree with it, or those who rate the issue so low that they would rather remain for other reasons, thereby consenting that the measure go ahead. Although this system would not create total regional homogeneity in ideas, it will move the nation in that direction. Although if the system to relocate people is paid for with public money, then it will likely be both costly and relatively easy to exploit for financial gain, unless, again, the opinion brackets are set sufficiently large that there would always be an alternative area with the same property value range. Not to mention how this would potentially disrupt the incentives for house improvements, among other things. Both of these options so far have revolved around the idea of heavily devolved power, but it need not be so to make a more democratically complete system possible. Emulating the market functionality more closely, another option may be to create a system of political currency which could be spent to determine the outcome of a decision. This could be accrued generally over time for citizens, but supplemented or multiplied by working in professions which are of particular social value, or require knowledge which would be particularly useful in determining the course of action in a particular area. Perhaps, for example, being a certified architect or civil engineer imparts a multiplier when matters of city planning or major infrastructure endeavours are being determined. Members of the military would receive a similar multiplier when it comes to matters of war and peace, economists on matters of economic structure, accountants on public spending, and legal practitioners on constitutional or esoteric legislative policy. The details are unimportant, as is the necessity that the income of this currency be unequal. The important element is that it be storable, and impart disproportionate influence when applied en masse. Returning once more to the steel mill, using this system, let us suggest that among the local residents is a pensioner who, though not often a political animal, would find it intolerable that her living space be any more polluted with noise and smoke. She expends all of her accrued political influence over her lifetime to vote against the measure, thereby counteracting the less valued opinions of those who just want to see more jobs created. However, it is also important to ensure that simply because one is in the minority of a decision, their wishes are not rendered immaterial. In the current system, it is possible for an individual to be diligent in their political participation, but have their voice be almost totally muted by finding themselves in the minority of every issue. The proposed political currency system potentially finds a solution to this through only deducting currency from the victorious side of the issue. If one so chooses to participate, they may be nigh guaranteed to effect change at some point, or likewise, if they only care about one issue, then they are much more likely to find themselves on the victorious side. And although this still creates a sort of tyranny, it is only a tyranny based on an overextension of political desires by a tyrannized group, rather than affording the same tyrannical power to 50% plus one of the voters. anyone who tries to control all aspects of political life will find themselves at a disadvantage compared to those who only care for one or two issues. Clearly none of these are as well fleshed out as they could be, but they could be some avenues for reforming democracy in a more democratic direction to counteract some of the described flaws, if indeed this is the desirable direction.